Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Procure. Today, our topic is juggling the joys of global disruption. I think all the disruption that we've seen around us in the last 5, 6 years have really shifted us as a procurement. If we talk about some interesting stats, in the last 12 months, 80% of the companies have gone through disruption in their supply chain. Now, that's a huge number. It shifted us from just focusing on cost savings to focusing on resilience, risk management, ensuring that supplies are continued for our organization. It's a very big shift in our role. So let's understand a bit more about disruption. Nishish, can you share with us a little bit about how you've been managing disruption? How have you juggled through the joys of global disruption in your organization?
Yeah, and before I answer that, Vidya, I just want to acknowledge this is the stats which you shared with us that disruptions are omnipresent. They're happening as we speak. So many organizations go through it, so there is no shying away. And I just wanted to share COVID was a great example, which everybody felt. We also saw how it resulted in a shift of pattern where people started to buy more goods compared to the services because they couldn't go out of their house. From that, I just want to come closer to our region. If you all remember, we had Evergreen, which was stuck in a canal, which is Suez Canal, and that single incident, what it did, it lasted for a few days, and we had almost 370 ships waiting, and they were stranded. The value of the goods stuck on sea was a whopping number of 10 billion US dollars in a matter of few days. And if I have to make it more recent, Red Sea is an example which comes to mind, the disruption in the Red Sea. And it's a region which sees global oil trade. Almost 12% of the total throughput passes through the region. We have the 40% of the goods from Asia to Europe, which go through the region. So it's something which has a very, very clear impact on the supply chain and how we all operate.
Absolutely.
Um, in terms of how to manage, so in my experience, as we discussed, I've seen a lot of disruptions, and I was just thinking, how can I put it in a framework which is relatable and something that the listeners and the viewers can learn from. So for me, it's a 3C model, which is to create a plan. As a procurement professional, you need to understand what the disruption means. So the specific incident, in case of Red Sea, it may mean that certain goods may not be available.
True.
Certain suppliers may see an increase in their input cost, which eventually will be passed on to you. So there could be inflationary pressure on your cost. It could also mean that you will have to change, or the organization has to change the product which it is selling, right? So it's important to understand where the impact is going to happen and create a plan around it. So if it is about finding new suppliers, or if it is about creating a different plan, do that. You can create a robust plan by collaborating. And when I say collaboration, I just want to make sure that it's not only internal, but also externally. So you need to collaborate with your suppliers. You genuinely need to understand what the disruption may mean for the suppliers and how they are getting impacted. And of course, internally also collaborate. So speak to the different teams, be it finance, sales, which can give you an excellent insight as to what the customers feel and what the real issues are, so that you can make a plan which is relatable and works for everybody. So once you have created a plan by collaboration, you need to communicate. So make sure that you are communicating it to the stakeholders, what the plan is, and also to your partner suppliers. So again, just for everybody to remember, create a plan through collaboration and communicate the plan to the relevant stakeholders. So that would be my
That's very, very
methodology.
interesting. That is an interesting methodology. Um, and it's an interesting story. You know, the topics that you've touched upon, I'm sure many of our listeners have experienced the same or are going through certain similar journeys. From my perspective, I think I'm going to add on to what you said, in a similar concept to what you said. You know, when COVID started, we had to think about our demand planning. We had just-in-time methodology that we were using.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, everything went out of the window. We had to really think outside the box to say, okay, now what do we do, right? So I think everybody shifted from just-in-time to just-in-case, right? And so did we. But when we did that, we ended up with a lot of stock of items which was really not useful later because the COVID restrictions dropped. And we ended up with dead stock with us. And then again, we had different disruptions. So we had to adapt again.
Mhm.
Right. So eventually, by learning and understanding and collaborating with our suppliers and our internal stakeholders, we started to identify the demand plans, right, in a disruption phase and in a normal phase. So we built the agility of moving from one to the other if it happened. I think that was very, very interesting learning for us as an organization, as procurement, as supply chain, of how we were managing these challenges, right? Going from just in time to just in case to managed inventory today, it's not an easy journey for anyone to have. Also, another important aspect here was that, you know, we were buying a lot of supplies for our facility management, right? So when you touched upon, okay, the ship was stuck, the supplies were very difficult, right? So what do you do in that case? Unfortunately, with that situations, our suppliers started to tell us that, you know, we can't guarantee the same rate to you. What we're offering today, it may change because, you know, something is coming from China or something is coming from a different part of the world which is not available anymore, and we're not sure what pricing we are going to get. So learning how to deal with it, moving from supplier to supplier, that agility was also important. So we built both internal and external agility to cater to these disruptions. I think that was really crucial learning for us to adapt as a procurement function, as a supply chain function. So for me, juggling the joys of global disruptions have been really interesting. I look at it in a positive manner rather than saying, oh, it's another new headache. Yes, it is, but you know, there's always a positive side to it. I think interestingly also, when we deal with these things, it also becomes very apparent that we need to understand our business very well. We need to understand what impact, if I choose a certain priority over others, what impact it's going to have on the organizational efficiency of my company as well as financial efficiency of my company, right? So it's a lot of different elements that we need to consider when we deal with such disruptions.
And just to add to that, Vidya, you made an excellent point, and I'm a firm believer that a chain is as strong as the weakest link. So you spoke a lot around understanding the business, but it's equally important to understand your suppliers and their value chain and how the supply chain looks, because if a supplier is at risk, the disruption may not or it need not impact us directly, but even if it impacts one of our supplier, the company at the end of the day is going through disruption, right? So focus on the suppliers, and as you mentioned, focus on the priorities of the business.
So it's safe to say that, you know, focus on your ecosystem, internal, external, and make sure you catch what's going to hit you before it hits you, right?
Agree, fully agree.
Okay, so I think you learned something new. I hope you learned something new today, and you will use some of these in the next disruption, hopefully not, that comes our way. Like, subscribe, and leave your comment if you would like to discuss any of these topics further with us. We're more than happy to reach out to you and have a conversation. For now, have a good day and see you in the next episode.
Bye bye.